Hello friends, my name's Emile and welcome to episode 3 of Reach the Peak, the show where you guys tell me what cars you want to see and then I take them up our snowy hill climb course to see just how good a time they can set. We have a packed show today full of 5 cars and we start today with possibly the least suitable car that has ever taken our hill climb course. This is the 2016 Aston Martin Vulcan. 820 horsepower, 590 pounds-foot of torque, 2,998 pounds of weight. This is an S2 class car, 953 in PI when equipped with the snow tyres. It is the most powerful vehicle here today, the torquiest vehicle here today, and the highest PI vehicle here today. However, it is the least suitable car for taking a rally course here today. So, last episode we had the BAC Mono go up the track. And if you remember rightly, I told you that car was pretty darn unsuited. Now take the 280 horsepower that the Mono has and replace that with 820 horsepower and you have how the Aston Martin Vulcan drives. This thing is probably the worst car that I've driven up this hill climb course thus far. It is just not particularly good at all. Very, very unsuited, extremely difficult to drive. It really does struggle coming up here, just trying to find traction. You know, the Vulcan's biggest issue really is just how much power it has. It also comes in the form of the weight. You see, it isn't actually that heavy a car, 2,998 pounds. You know, that's not a lot of weight. Granted, it's a lot more than the Mono weighed, but when you consider power to weight ratios, this and the Mono are pretty similar, I'd say. So, yeah, the Vulcan just struggled really horribly. Of course, it's a rear-wheel drive car. You know, some of the key issues, you know, the Vulcan, I haven't driven this thing stock before. This is the first time I've actually driven the Vulcan up this hill climb course. But I would imagine the handling characteristics of this vehicle very much rely on downforce, you know, that wing and the splitter and the diffuser and all the rest of it. And they just can't get to work on here because I'm not taking the corners fast enough. And when I finally do get fast enough, like up here, you know, we've got to really slow down for sharp corners because, you know, a hill climb course, it's full of tricky corners. Which are very, you know, there's low speed and medium speed corners up here. There's not really too many in the way of high speed corners. So yeah, the Vulcan really did struggle. Once it could get on it, it was pretty quick. It just really couldn't get on it all that often. So yeah, a bit of a disappointing performance from our highest PI car that we've ever had around the track thus far. Next up, we have the 1990 Lotus Carlton. This thing has 379 horsepower, 419 pounds-foot of torque, 3,641 pounds. It is an A-class car, 784 in PI once it is equipped with snow tyres. The Carlton is the heaviest vehicle here today as well. 3,641 pounds is an awful lot. Now, the Lotus Carlton is front-engined, it's rear-wheel drive, it weighs quite a lot, it has a fair amount of power. You would expect this thing to not be particularly great up here, a la Hemi-Cuda, which had very similar statistics to this vehicle. However, the Carlton was strangely good at taking this hill climb course. I'm not sure why, but this vehicle seems pretty darn suited as far as rear-wheel drive cars go. This is probably one of the better rear-wheel drive cars I've driven up here in terms of suitability for taking the course. It was surprisingly decent up here, which I wasn't expecting from this vehicle, you know. It is a little bit slidey. It can, you know, or it will slide out, but then again, it's 380 horsepower rear-wheel drive car going up a snowy hill climb course. What do you really expect? But you know, it does have decent traction, it can get the power down. Again, as far as rear-wheel drive cars go, probably one of the better ones I've driven up here. And I really wasn't expecting to say that about the Lotus Carlton, especially when you consider how much weight this thing has. We've spoken about this before, you don't want too much weight going up this course. Granted, you don't want to be too lightweight. But 3,600 pounds is quite a lot. It's probably one of the heaviest vehicles to go up the hill climb course thus far. And you really just didn't feel the weight of this thing. It honestly felt like it weighed about 3,000 pounds. And, you know, the Carlton's always a good choice when it comes to cars because it's pretty darn well rounded. You know, it's got the Lotus handling, but at the same time, it's a very, very quick vehicle in a straight line. And, you know, well-roundedness is kind of what you need up here. I mean, granted, four-wheel drive is as well, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Yeah, the Carlton, if you want to make a rally car out of this thing, specifically like a rear-wheel drive rally car, if you want to go for something a bit different, the Carlton, it should be a pretty darn decent base to start on. So, yeah, strangely good car. Go drive the Lotus Carlton, make it into a rally car. Tell me how you do with it. Next up, we actually have a rally car this time. This is another 1990 car, however this is the Subaru Legacy. It has 217 horsepower, 199 pounds-foot of torque, and it weighs 2,990 pounds. The Legacy, oh, it's a B-class car, 700 PI once it's equipped with snow tyres, by the way, just thought I'd throw that in there. The Legacy, it did struggle a little bit. The Legacy's biggest issue is it just hasn't got the power or the torque it really needed. You know, on paper this car should be pretty good, and that's what I looked at. I went on paper and I was like, wow, you know, 2,990 pounds isn't bad. That's pretty optimal for going up here. You know, 217 horsepower, it shouldn't be too bad, but this car just felt really, really slow. Do not get me wrong, this is a fantastic handling car. You know, we'll find that with the slower cars, or with the cars with less power, you know, they are very good handling because sticking snow tyres on them essentially alleviates one of the issues of these older, lighter cars. You know, the fact that they have is kind of skinny, not particularly grippy tyres as standard because, of course, they're a little bit older or a little bit less powerful or so on. And sticking these great big snow tyres on them will increase grip. We'll see that pretty shortly with the last car in this episode. That's a case of a car which is pretty darn slow, but you stick snow tyres on it and it becomes a very good handling vehicle. The Legacy just, it didn't have the straight line speed, it didn't have the power it needed. I know I've said this a lot, but if this thing had 150 more horsepower, it would be fantastic. I think it's a good place to start with Subaru, certainly the first Subaru that's taken our course. I have no doubt the Imprezas and, you know, even going beyond that, Evo Skylines, you know, those will be pretty darn decent on this course. But as far as the Legacy goes, it just doesn't have the power, unfortunately. But it's still a fantastic handling car. I'm sure with some upgrades thrown into this vehicle, it could be a very, very competent rally car. Of course, this model of Legacy was a rally car. I believe McRae drove this one. I've got a 555 livery on it. I don't think those are the correct colours, because most of the 555 cars are blue. Maybe there was a green one at some point. I just chose this livery because it was cool, and that's how I choose most of my liveries for this series. But yeah, Legacy, a little bit disappointing, but ultimately a little bit expected, and still not a bad car by any stretch of the imagination. Next up, we have possibly one of the more interesting vehicles in Horizon 3, although not really on face value. This is a 1991 GMC Syclone, 280 horsepower, 360 pound-foot of torque, 3,613 pounds of weight, A-class car, 723 in PI with snow tyres. The GMC Syclone was one of the first ever performance SUVs slash pickup trucks. Of course, the SUV version is the Typhoon. What this is essentially is a GMC pickup truck, or a GM level pickup truck, with a big turbocharged engine in it and performance tyres and all sorts on it. It's a crazy, crazy contraption, and as it turns out, it is very, very, very good up this hill climb course. Again, this is another car, I was speaking about it with the Carlton. This is a fantastically well-rounded vehicle. It has four-wheel drive, which you need up here. And it does have the power, you know, 280 horsepower for a turbocharged 6-cylinder, I believe these were. It's not a lot of power on face value compared to these days, but 360 pound-foot torque, that's a lot of torque. And again, as I've explained before, you know, as far as pushing your way up the mountain, torque is what you want. And the fact that this car's very torquey does mean it gets along well. Granted, the Syclone does have a bit of a terrible gearbox. It's only a 4-speed gearbox here. However, because it has a lot of torque, and because this hill climb doesn't really let you get up to top speeds particularly easily, the gearbox in this vehicle never really became an issue. Yeah, I really enjoyed driving the Syclone up here. Out of all the cars here today, this is probably one I would recommend to you and actually go out and get. Granted, the Carlton is a close second, but the Syclone, go try this thing out, because it is insanely good at taking this hill climb course. I did really enjoy driving the GMC Syclone. It did everything I wanted it to and a little bit more. I really do like the Syclone. I like crazy cars, and the Syclone is a very, very crazy contraption. So, yeah, in that respect, really enjoyed driving the Syclone up here, and I'm very pleased that it did as well as it did. Anyways, our final car for today is the slowest class of vehicle we have had go around so far. This is a 1971 Meyers Manx. It has 60 horsepower, 82 pounds-foot of torque, 1,235 pounds of weight. It is a C-Class car, 506 in PI, which means it's the lowest PI vehicle here today. It is the least powerful vehicle here today. It's the least torquey vehicle here today, and it is the lightest vehicle here today. And in fact, it's probably the lightest vehicle this entire series has seen, the least powerful vehicle this entire series has seen, and you get where I'm going with that. The Meyers Manx stock, this is a D-Class car, 106 in PI. However, putting snow tyres on it shoots it up 400 PI points. Work that one out. Anyways, once it has got snow tyres on it, actually, the Manx is, well, predictably slow. Very slow. Not a quick car. It really struggles to get to 60, which is a bit of an issue. Granted, it is a good handling car. It's very chuckable. I can imagine it's a lot of fun to drive. If there was sort of a shorter hill climb in this game, you know, the Manx would probably be pretty fun. And I can imagine if you stick the turbo rally engine in it or something, the Manx is a pretty crazy, pretty darn fun hill climbing contraption. However, the Manx as it is just... oh, it's slow. This was a bit agonising to do, and the worst bit about it is I know there's slower cars to come. Wait for the Christmas special. That's gonna have some. Interesting cars in it. But as the Manx stands, it just isn't very quick. Very nice car to drive though. Don't use 4th gear in this car. Actually, I should point that out. Because, well, if you change up to 4th, you will lose all momentum. All of the momentum will just go if you try to put this thing into 4th. So, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd say leave it in 3rd. Granted, 3rd does top out at like 60 miles per hour, but 4th tops out at like 72. And again, if you're losing power, there's no real point of changing because you'll just lose all of your speed. So, yeah, the Manx, it was fun. Don't get me wrong, I do like the Meyers Manx actually. As far as Beetle contraption goes, this is probably one of the better Beetle-based contraptions there is, but, well, other than the Volkswagen Thing. I'd quite like that in Forza. Turn 10, can we have the Thing? That'd be nice. Anyways, yeah, the Manx as it stands, not quick. Fun, certainly. Agonising slightly because of how long it took to get up here. But she's almost there. Just one last sprint to the finish for the Meyers Manx, and across the line. Okay, onto the times, and the Syclone was actually the fastest car today, going into 6th place with a 2:18.972, beats out a VF Commodore, just a little bit off of a Viper GTS, very quick time from there. The Lotus Carlton beat the Aston Martin Vulcan, for reasons. This is the only show on the internet where a Carlton will beat a Vulcan, in anything really. The Carlton set at 2:21.175, and the Vulcan set at 2:21.742. The Vulcan just struggled too much, and the Carlton was a very good vehicle to drive indeed. The Legacy goes into 10th with a 2:27.548, pretty good, beats out an S14 Sylvia, beats out the Cuda. Yeah, solid time from the Legacy, just unfortunately that car didn't have the power. And finally today, the Meyers Manx goes into 15th with a 2:46.200. By far and away the slowest car we've ever driven. It's almost 15 seconds slower than the A86 we had round previously. A good car, granted, but it really needs power in it to be successful. Anyways, friends, that is it for this episode of Reach the Peak. I do hope you've enjoyed. As always, if there is any cars you'd like to see tackle the hill climb, then please feel free to leave them below in the comments section. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all very much for watching. Mine has been the real Emile, and until next time, farewell.